What's up, y'all? Happy Friday. Welcome to WWT Live. We are going to be talking about all things Ronda, I think, most likely. I mean, is she coming back? Is she not coming back? And a lot of stuff with TNT as well. Plus a special announcement at the end of the show. So keep it locked.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
What's up, y'all? Happy Friday. Happy Friday. This week went by so fast. I feel like it's going to be Christmas next week. But we have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to get into. But before we do all of that,
go forward. Go forward.
The professor has gone forward and he's joining us. What it do, Professor?
That's hilarious to me. I am good, TGIF. Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good. Just a lot of so many. It's good. It's just a lot. And then you look up and you're like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. And you look up again, it's like, oh, it's 11 o'clock at night. Like, totally. Should I stay up later or should I try to finish tomorrow? Like, there's just a lot of things going on. But no, it's I can't complain at all.
It's there's a question I want to ask, but I probably should wait for Sed to be here because that question probably would suit him better. But I may ask it at some point.
Yeah, you should ask it anyway because send positive vibes to Sed. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. The question is probably, well, this isn't risque enough for After Dark. So it's not that. It's just a very popular social media craze right now that I'm curious.
Oh,
first date, Cheesecake Factory or nah?
Gotcha.
See, my stuff is real.
Yeah, bland. Bland. Shout out to Dylan. First of Christmas. First your birthday, then Christmas. Okay, we'll definitely have to celebrate the official producer of the show. Yeah, I saw that list. I feel like it's I will look at something a little sideways if they choose Cheesecake Factory, and not because of the cost. It's just because you didn't put in thought. Would I not go on the date? Would I not go on the date? If we get to that dating point, then I probably will go on the date because I've already had enough conversations with you that you seem interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't just, meet somebody and it's like, oh, you're hot, let's go. Like, that's like, I have time. Like, my time is very valuable. But I am far more impressed by somebody who, in the course of our conversations, like, might hear, like, there's been the restaurants that I go to now that I frequent often is through one particular guy that I used to go out with a lot. He was this is like, wow, this might be After Dark. It's not bad though. He worked for the FBI and he used to love like just trying different restaurants. And so we went to all these restaurants, but our first date was this like restaurant I never heard of, and even to this day I still go to that restaurant. So I love somebody who, through our conversation, picks out like certain things, like, oh, she likes West Indian food, or she likes Thai food, she likes this, and then puts in the effort, which is literally on your phone, checking Yelp, whatever. And then also knowing that criteria, like she don't like to drive, she don't like this, she don't like that, like knowing certain things, that definitely like is more effort. However, with this Cheesecake Factory, like I have my set thing there too. I do agree with Bobby too. Ice cream or milkshake and stuff like that is good. However, like if you, and this is how this, I mean, for me, because I don't pay for first dates. I haven't. But for me, I feel like this is how guys save money. You have a conversation with the woman first, and you don't have just one conversation. You actually have several conversations with that person throughout a period of time. So by the time you get to the date, like it's like you don't mind, spending the $10 on Starbucks or the $300 on dinner, wherever you fall in that thing. But if you just meet somebody and you're like, oh, she's hot, I want to take her out, then there's a high chance that it may or may not work. And then you're going to be pissed that you wasted the money. She might be pissed because she wasted an outfit. Like, my percentage of going out with guys who I find really, really cool and dope and I don't regret is very like low. Like everybody that I go out with, like, we've had conversations and they're really dope people. And if it doesn't work out, we're still friends. So I really, that's my like 2 cents on that list, I suppose. But
okay, I was just curious. I wanted to hear from a level-headed. Never mind. That was never.
I'm sure Sen might have a different answer though. But we'll
we can table that discussion for later. But I do like. Yeah, I mean, I like your explanation, which I think is part of the missing part of this, which is how often are people talking before you actually go on the first date. That fixes a lot. But anyway,
well, nobody wants to talk anymore. That's another thing too.
Then there's that. But that's so I guess I have something to talk about for the other show. Okay.
Yeah, for the WWT After Dark. But in that case, for everybody else who's doing all that.
Go forward. Go forward.
Do you? What do we got up first?
Well, you mentioned Ronda Rousey at the title of this show, and so it's very interesting that Ronda Rousey, after we all thought she retired from pro wrestling, is back, kind of, sort of. So she found herself in the ring, teaming with Marina Shafir, and they were against Taya Valkyrie, and I can't remember who her partner was, but it was at a Lucha Vavavoom event. And it's interesting because Ronda's in the ring. She was in the crowd, comes up to be a part of the match, kind of does her thing. And of course, her and Marina were part of the MMA version of the Four Horsewomen, and they're still very cool. And just before we went on air, she went on and Ronda went on and reposted another indie event, which is kind of wild when you think about that. And then as you start putting the tea leaves together, things get very interesting. For instance, this sudden return out of nowhere to pro wrestling, she happens to have a memoir coming. The memoir is called Our Fight. And guess when this would be released? That would be April the 2nd, 2024. Oh, wait, WrestleMania weekend. So we get 2 memoirs from prominent female wrestlers, WrestleMania week, from 2 of the 3 people who happened to be in the very first all-female WrestleMania main event. Very interesting. Can't create these stories. I'll be very intrigued to see what her memoir, which is titled Our Fight, it's available for pre-order right now. I'm curious to see what will happen in that memoir. And God forbid if either of these 2 memoirs have stories about each other. Could be interesting.
Ooh, you think so? Well, I mean, I read Rhonda's first book, and I've been recommending it for a long time. It was informative. Like there were some stuff, but it wasn't like Jada Pinkett stuff.
Salacious, got it.
Yeah. So but I think either way, I think it's gonna be a good thing. And yeah, definitely. But that makes me think, with her memoir coming out, do you think that she's gonna return to WWE? Or do you think it's just more of a partnership between the 2 of them?
The partnership between her and Marina, or
her and WWE. Like, do you think WWE will promote it?
Yeah, I don't know that WWE is necessarily connected to this particular memoir. Probably have to do a little bit of additional work to check that out. If they are partnering with her and she's doing this indie run right now, that's interesting, because I would imagine that they would want her under their umbrella right now if we're leading to some partnership with this memoir. I also wonder if WWE was involved, if they would actually have two memoirs dropping WrestleMania week. I don't think that they would. I think they want to put all their muscle behind one of them. So this could get really interesting. I think the memoir will probably be very good reading, because if her first one came out 2015, then that means this one will likely cover a lot of her time in WWE, which I'm sure people would want to hear about.
And it's going to cover her ending of UFC, because the book stopped it in her rise, like where she was dominating. So it doesn't cover, you know, the losses and all the stuff and the in between and I don't quote me, but I don't know. I'm not going to say that, the depression that she dealt with. So yeah, it's going to cover. I think that part leading up to WWE will probably be the part where people are going to talk about most. And then maybe the time of her spending in the WWE, like how fans treated her. She had a child.
Right.
I don't think she was married by that time that book came out. So there's like a lot of different things that that she could talk about. So I think either way, it's going to be a good book.
Yeah, I agree.
Bosa saying Ronda always thrived in tag team action. She did with Shayna, and now she's with Marina. Yeah, I agree.
Well, and her WrestleMania debut, her WWE debut, came in a tag team match as well, a mixed tag match that she had. I believe she was with Kurt Angle in that tag match. So yeah.
Yes. Said you're a tiny bit late, but we did talk about it. But said we can definitely credit said for putting it in our chat in order to talk about it. So shout out to said, he said in the chat, because you know he on the streets. So Dylan saying, let's see how long Ronda is in HOF after this book. Huh?
That's interesting. So? I mean, you know, and I'm wondering if he's. So there are two ways that we could take that. One, it is the idea that how long will it be before she enters the Hall of Fame, or the second way is if there were plans to put her in the Hall of Fame, how long would she stay there? With the idea that there could be some, you know, tea or some crazy things said about WWE. I have to imagine that with her being from under the WWE umbrella right now, it would free her to say whatever it is. Not that she necessarily has anything bad to say about WWE, but it would free her if there were things that she wanted to objectively say. But you're right. I think this period covers a lot of interesting ground for her. You know, the decision to leave UFC, the decision to come to WWE, because that was 2018. You know, obviously getting married, having the baby. I'm curious if she would talk about the feud that was supposed to actually happen with her and Becky, you know, and that not. I would imagine both of them might cover that in their book, just depending upon what the circumstances behind it was, if there really even is a story other than, you know, Becky's nose got broke and the stars never realigned.
Right. Well, we will find out. So do you think that these matches are going to be one-offs, or are we going to start seeing her consistently on the indie scene? Because what people don't realize, and I actually noticed this too in doing a lot of interviews, we have for women wrestlers, a lot of the women are on the East Coast. Like the East Coast is very heavy as far as women wrestlers.
Yes.
And not to say she's going to, you know, wrestle for just a women-only promotion, but there are still quite a few places between like Vegas and Los Angeles that you can get great, you know, indie matches. So I wonder if this is going to be like a one-off for her, or are we going to see her like pop up to different ones here and there?
I think it's interesting. What I also think is interesting, because, you know, she put out this tweet, that the tweet that said was referring to dealing with PW Revolver and their debut in California. And she said how very convenient, which again is kind of a shocking kind of thing. There's a part of me that wonders if she is really trying to help Marina, You know, her presence, because Marina's run in pro wrestling has not been anything close to Ronda's, whether it
Right.
was her brief time in NXT or even her current time in AEW, it just hasn't hit the same. So if Marina's able to get the backing of her world-renowned, super popular friend, everybody wins in this scenario. So there's a part of me that wonders if she's going to go wherever Marina goes. And because I don't know if Marina's part of this card that's happening in November for Wrestling Revolver or PW Revolver, but if that's the case, I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder how yeah, because Taya's also been in the indie scene for quite some time.
Right.
She lives out here in Los Angeles. So I wonder, I'm very curious. I am going to put it in my calendar to check out PW Revolver. I think it's November
16th.
That's the same weekend as Full Gear, I think.
That's correct. So it's that Thursday. Then, AEW has that Collision Rampage show that Friday, Full Gear that Saturday. That would be correct.
Huh. That's interesting. Boss is saying if Ronda went to AEW, I could see the fake TK creating a women's tag team. It's so okay. So for the people who are watching, so you guys are gonna have to connect the dots on this because I can't give you the whole thing. But for the people who are watching this, it's hilarious because I was interviewing somebody that is familiar with the fake TK, and I referenced that. I'm like, yeah, the fake TK, and it's hilarious because obviously they work for the fake TK, so it's just kind of like, yeah, I can't acknowledge what you just said. Like,
right.
And then I said I referenced it again, and then I was like, yeah, maybe I should just keep that title to WWT Live. Like, I don't think it's gonna. Yeah,
it won't hit the same.
That was never what made you think it was gonna be.
It won't. Yeah.
So
yeah.
For the folks who are watching, you'll be able to put the puzzle pieces together, and if you have no idea, you have to continue watching Women's Wrestling Talk, in the next 2 weeks or so to figure it all out. And if you don't figure it out, that's okay too. But yeah, I am human, and I learn things too, and I learned that our fake TK reference will stay in the house of WWT Live.
In this house only. Yes.
Oh my goodness. What do we got next?
Well, there's a lot. There's an awful lot. Let's go here because I think this is interesting since we're talking about women. Dave Meltzer, known to some people as Uncle Dave, not me, but Dave Meltzer actually had this interesting statement about a former NXT tag champion who is now on the Monday Night Raw roster, specifically speaking of Katana Chance. And I'll just read his quote, and then we can dissect this. This is what he says. He's referencing the WWE, and he says, look at what they're doing with Katana Chance, which is actually nothing. Katana Chance, I think, could be a really great baby face, but they've dropped the ball on her. And I think that's interesting that he would mention her and not her tag team partner, Caden Carter. And I don't know. I guess the question is, do we think that she's being wasted right now in WWE, or is Dave Meltzer just Meltzering again?
I mean, I feel like I feel like everybody could be utilized better in WWE, but also too, it's kind of like there's only so many hours. And there's so many people. Like, so for instance, if you have so another great email. So if you have like six kids, right? You can only, like, you want to be the best parent to all of them, but you can't at the same time every time. So yeah, WWE could do right by a lot of wrestlers, but the mature thing is that there's only so much time. There's only so much bandwidth. You can't make everybody a star at the same time and all the things. And also it just might not be the time or the right fit. Like that's kind of like life too. Like it just might not be the right time. Certain things don't line up. Like she could be at her peak, but the writers are not looking at her, or vice versa. So there's just so many different things in play that we're not privy to. And there's also stuff that are in play that none of us, there's just so many things going on in the behind the scenes that maybe she doesn't know or WWE doesn't know. Like it's just a lot of different things. So, I think we all can name somebody in the locker room, male and female, that's like, yo, they're not getting the shine, but it's one of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I reference this often as what I call the Scott Steiner treatment, which is when you're brought into the company and your first match is a title match. It usually never breeds well. And the first match that they got was for the tag titles, ironically against Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey, who we just mentioned. So, I get, obviously wanting to showcase them as the longest reigning NXT women's tag team champions. But if you face the champions and you don't win at your start, where do you go from there? So I think that's part of the problem. The other thing, which I think is so interesting, is with all of the talk that there's been going around about the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, there's been a desire to try to stabilize that and then create competitors and contenders for those tag titles. So, and again, as you mentioned, there are only so many hours of television that WWE has. And right now, their women's stories have not been centered around the tag titles. Even with Chelsea Green being champion for now 100 days, most of her time has not been spent defending the tag titles. We're going to get a rare defense coming up this coming Tuesday as part of Halloween Havoc. So if we're not talking women's tag titles and the women's singles titles are kind of already tied up with contenders there, or in the case of the world championship, Rhea is everywhere. Then where does that put Katana and Kaden? So I think at this point, now that Triple H is 100% in control of creative, I think we get a chance to see, okay, what can be done. And is this a case where we do kind of like we've seen with some of the other former NXT stars that made their way back to NXT? Maybe that is the space for them at this current time. So, it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And they have the ability too. Like I was talking to Ariane about this as well. If you think about like Ariane or Evie, like, so for you guys who don't know, we are doing a watch along for Total Divas season 1, episode 1, which is insane because when I watched that first episode, I remember that episode and it seemed like it was further along the line, like, season 2 or 3. But that was the first episode where they were supposed to debut WrestleMania and that it didn't happen. Right. And so you think of Ariane and her journey and Eva, and they both went down to NXT and they both, subsequently like got let go while they're at NXT. But I think that's not a thing anymore. And, NXT is very much flowing into a legitimate third brand. So if not, then go and have a storyline at NXT and, thrive there. And then, the ability to go and come back is a lot better. So, and then on top of that, we don't know what's in play for her as well. Like, that's true. She might not be able to do things that we're not privy to. So, it'd be great to see somebody on camera and more of a storyline, but it can't just all be on WWE. It might not just be WWE too. So,
yeah. And then if you look at it, just in terms of style and size, they're right now looking at more powerhouses on Monday Night Raw. We've got next week a 5-woman challenge, and all of them are powerhouses. And you can even argue that Zoe Stark is, if not a powerhouse, a striker for sure. I think the extremely petite build and the super acrobatic nature of a Katana Chance kind of puts her in a space where, again, in NXT, she was small, but she didn't have to compete in a world with a Nia Jax and a Raquel Rodriguez and a Mommy all on the same brand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the question then becomes, okay, how do we realistically present her in this virtual land of the giants? And I think that's another question that has to be answered that we don't necessarily know the answer to right now.
This is true. This is true. What do we got? What do we got next?
All right. Well, from there, since we're still talking about women's wrestling, and we'll just kind of connect the dots, and the connection there would be, I mentioned Rhea Ripley and I mentioned Shayna Baszler, 2 of the 5 women that will be battling for the Women's World Championship next weekend at Crown Jewel. Well, Shayna Baszler recently did an interview to talk about her rivalry with Rhea Ripley. Of course, that rivalry dates back to 2019 in a battle for the Women's Championship where Rhea Ripley would defeat Shayna Baszler in that. And then, of course, they battled during War Games. Well, since then, basically, she being Shayna, is saying, we enjoy beating the crap out of each other. And basically says anytime she wants to battle, she can come get it. And her exact quote is, I mean, anytime she wants to get it, she can. Of course, their paths will cross again next Saturday as part of Crown Jewel. And again, kind of going into what we just talked about with Katana Chance, you know, if we're looking at a Shayna Baszler, a Zoe Stark, a Rhea Ripley, you know, a Raquel Rodriguez and a Nia Jax, where would a Katana Chance fall in there? So I think that's interesting. And again, with that saying, we're also seeing the rise again of Shayna Baszler, which I think can only be a good thing because there's not a killer right now in that women's division. So bringing her back in that space, I think is really, really good. And I'd be down for seeing a one-on-one match with her and Rhea. I think that'd be really dope.
Do you think a couple of things? So with Shayna, because when Shayna first came onto NXT, obviously there's a dominance there, and then, you know, Ronda's came after. And, you know, we were definitely asking for that pairing as far as tag teams or War Horsewomen and stuff like that. When we finally got it, do you think that run with Ronda killed the possibility of like her rise again? Like, yeah, she's now on the rise again potentially, but do you think it slowed it down? Because there was a moment where like even her and Nia was okay, and then it kind of dropped down, and then there's Ronda, and we were kind of excited for that, but then that was like I don't think that had quite of a payoff like we all expected it to. And so with that being said, do you think one, it was even worth it? Like, should they? Because there's certain storylines that we all are clamoring for, a la the Samoan dynasty and stuff like that, even though we're kind of getting it with the bloodline, that may never happen. So do you think it was better for it to have never happened, or for it to happen in order to, you know, push her to this next rise?
What I think is interesting about that is, as I'm thinking about both of their runs, we never got a great Shayna Baszler run while there was a great Ronda Rousey run. So, you know, Shayna, of course, her NXT run was great while Ronda was on the main roster. When Ronda went away and then they brought Shayna up to the main roster, remember, Shayna was a killer. And Shayna was, you know, Shayna went through that elimination chamber single-handedly, for those who don't remember. And that led to that whole WrestleMania match she was having with Becky 2020. Ronda is out of the picture at this point. Of course, we had the pandemic hit, but many people might have forgotten that crazy spot that happened on that episode of Monday Night Raw where Shayna bit Becky's back and Becky was bleeding and we thought she was a vampire and all this craziness. And then it was like, okay, after all of that and then the pandemic, you know, we didn't quite see Shayna the same. And then here comes Ronda, you know. So I think, unfortunately, the two of them were almost considered kind of the same ilk. So it was almost like we can't have two MMA fighters here. The role of the MMA fighter is currently being played by insert name. And I think at the time, creative was not creative enough to be able to say you two can coexist perhaps on different paths and have great runs to lead to a great match. So since they couldn't really coexist, which I think is unfortunate, when they did try to put them together as a tag team, it didn't hit the same, because most of us who liked Shayna were still all pulling off of her old NXT run. Kind of the same way we felt about Asuka. We were pulling off of that run because we know she could be great, but neither of them were presented well. And I think that was because it feels like WWE said, hey, if we're going to present an MMA women's wrestler and we have Ronda, who is the most recognizable name, then why would we put anybody else in that space?
Well,
I mean, that's what it seems like they did. There's probably a way that could have happened, but, I think either I'm stuck or TK stuck, and I can't figure out who. Okay. Somebody let me know if you can see one of us. Okay, so you guys see TK frozen. Okay. I was trying to figure out who's who in the zoo and what's happening there. So hopefully TK will come back to us because she is frozen at the moment. So yeah, I do think it's interesting, and I'm intrigued to see what you guys think about this whole Shayna and Ronda thing in terms of why it was not presented well for them to coexist. I'm really intrigued by that. So you guys let me know what you think about that. But that's kind of what I think. And I think it's unfortunate because I think there's a way that could have happened. But it was not presented that way. So that's the deal with that. So let's kind of move forward as we're talking about going forward. Congratulations to Liv Morgan, who is celebrating her 9-year anniversary with WWE. She is kind of the little engine that could, like we really all thought when Liv Morgan first came in, people started seeing her rise and people started seeing, hey, you know what? She can possibly really be a player here, and people got behind her. And of course, everybody remembers Money in the Bank, her winning in 2022 and then cashing in that night against Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey's kind of the theme running through today's show. And so it's really kind of exciting to see the rise of Liv Morgan becoming the SmackDown Women's Champion, eventually holding tag team gold, currently out on injury right now. But we've really seen, I think, the maturation of Liv Morgan. And I think it's a great thing. So congratulations to Liv Morgan. And again, she now holds the distinction of being the only competitor to defeat Ronda Rousey 3 times, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But shout out to Liv Morgan, who again is celebrating her 9-year anniversary. So let's talk about this interesting elephant in the room. I saw some people talking about this earlier in the chat, but now is probably a really, really good time to talk about it. Tony Khan, who in most other circles outside of WWT is the real TK, or is TK anyway. Tony Khan had been saying for the last week that he has had a massive surprise for Sting. A special gift for Sting is what he said, in light of Sting announcing his retirement last week, and that retirement will take place at Revolution 2024. So we all, with somewhat bated breath, watched AEW Dynamite to see what would be the surprise coming to Sting. Would it be a special championship? Would it be money? Would it be a new opportunity? Instead, it proved to be the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, who made his maiden voyage into AEW. Now, Sting was very surprised, and he went on to Twitter and the socials to say, quote, he put me on the map in the very beginning, and Ric Flair is going to be with me every step of the way to the end, and we'll go out in a blaze of glory. So I'm not exactly sure, and I would love to hear what you guys think about number one, Tony Khan's gift of Ric Flair to Sting. And then secondly, what do you think it means for Ric Flair, who in his own words said, hey, you know what? I'm going to, if you'll have me, I'm going to ride this thing out with you until the very end. What does this mean for Sting and Ric Flair, with Flair, I guess, being with Sting in AEW until the end of Sting's wrestling career? Let's see what you guys have to say about this. Boza says the fake TK was so desperate for ratings, they fell from 900 to 775 for two reasons. One, they gave away the main event, MJF versus Juice first, and then two, the shootings in Lewiston. You can probably add a 3 or a 4 to that because there were the baseball playoffs going on and the NBA going on as well. So there was a lot of competition for AEW Dynamite, just like there was a lot of competition, ironically, for NXT. Bobby says, did anyone expect Flair to show up on Dynamite? I think the answer is a rousing no. I definitely didn't expect that. Didn't see that coming. Boza says, this gift is an excuse to give us Adam Copeland versus Cage, Christian Cage in a 6-man at Full Gear. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. Dylan says, this is a great gift for Sting. He will be there until March. There's not much else to say. Yeah, I'm really intrigued by this, and I'm intrigued to see Ric Flair. Let me just say this. It felt different seeing Ric Flair show up on AEW television. It felt really, really different. For one, you'll note that AEW did not use Ric Flair's normal theme song that you hear in WWE. And some days it just, I don't know, it feels like, I want to be careful when I say this, but it feels like Flair is kind of still showing up wherever there is not just a check, but sometimes it feels almost spiteful in the direction of WWE. And I do believe that the real TK is officially back. Is she back with the clone? I think the clone is loaded.
I don't know what happened. The internet was like, it's off. It's like, nah, I paid my bill. I know that. The bill's paid. And I'm like, I also brought the box by me because I usually have it upstairs. And I'm like,
yeah.
So, you know, it's that said. I don't know the mojo you put on my internet set because for some reason you don't have any problems, but all of a sudden I've been having problems. I'm just glad I didn't have problems earlier today and yesterday. Yeah. Yes, the real TK is okay. Thank you, Bosa. But yeah.
So let me ask you your thoughts on Ric Flair showing up on AEW as Tony Khan's gift to Sting on Dynamite.
There's a lot of, well, we already know he's not going to retire, and we already know what he wants to do. So I mean, and Tony Khan is giving him the ability to do so. So there's one. I am curious because wasn't it like last year, or the year before, where he was taken off, kind of like his woo sound was taken off of one of the intros, and then he kind of made a little thing about it on Twitter, and then he got back in their good graces, and then it was added. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean for its relationship with WWE? And then the relationship with WWE is not like it used to be. It was not as a chokehold like Vince had on a lot of the superstars. But I am curious because he's not on a Legends contract. Like, there's questions that we probably don't have the answers to, but there's something awry with that.
Yeah, there are lots of questions. His voice was taken off of that intro for WWE because of the infamous Dark Side of the Ring episode with the plane ride from hell. And if you'll notice, it was during that whole time when that was off where we got Ric Flair's last match last year, the same weekend as SummerSlam, and all of those kinds of things going on, and the things that he has said. He's back in, obviously, the good graces of WWE. I don't know for how long, because I had the same questions, like, okay, So what does this mean for your relationship with WWE? That you
Mhm.
are not just doing a one-off, but you're saying I'm going to be here for the duration. It just felt weird. It felt weird. And sometimes I just wonder, and this is purely conjecture, I just wonder, does Flair still feel like this is the 80s and he still needs to fight WWE? Even though it's been proven that no other company has treated Flair as good as WWE. I still say that send-off that they gave him for WrestleMania 24 and the
Mhm.
lead up to that was unlike anything else he's received in his career. And
Mhm.
so to then have multiple, send-offs with Impact and then, this whole thing that happened last year and then almost dying in the ring and, like, geesh, it's kind of wild to me.
May-
So,
Maybe that's what the problem is. Maybe WWE didn't want to give him
mm,
what he wanted, because there
mm,
are times too, where, because WWE is a publicly traded company, they're beholden to certain standards. Like a
yes,
wrestler, I know several wrestlers who they couldn't even go to the tryout because they've had prior heart conditions, and it's not heart
wow,
conditions where they have a pacer.
yeah,
It's more like a heart murmur or like those type of things. So now you have somebody who is way advanced in age. They can't risk like you doing the stuff that you used to do, because if something goes wrong, like this is a publicly traded company, like
mm-hmm,
there's stuff. So maybe it was kind of like, look, you can have this Legends contract, but we can't bring you in the ring. We can't have another, he probably came with some storyline or something and they weren't feeling
mm-hmm,
it. And it's like, you know
mm-hmm.
what? I'm Ric Flair
Yep,
and I'm going to go where, somebody's going to allow me to do all these things.
right,
And,
right.
and now that I'm kind of saying that, that seems more plausible,
That
because,
seems very plausible.
there's no way, even if Sting was with WWE, um, there's no way that they're going to allow him to have a match.
Right,
There's no a
right,
full match.
right.
There's no way.
That scare that he had at that Night of Champions match against Seth, that's where they said, okay, it's because, and I understand, you could arguably go back to the tragedy that happened with Owen Hart and where they realized, we cannot have a man die in the ring again. Like
Mm-hmm.
we just can't. And so obviously during the Attitude Era, they were way out there and all those kinds of things. But in this space and time, I think they want to, and your explanation actually makes perfect sense, because I totally think there's talk on the internet that we don't know who Sting's final opponent could be. There's talk that it could be Ric Flair. And as asinine as this idea sounds, the fan in Tony Khan would likely say, oh my God, I can give the people Sting versus Ric Flair, for Sting's final match. It'll be a rematch of the last match on Nitro. Like, he could probably build a whole thing in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And it could end up tragic, actually. I mean, I think they're taking a massive chance here with Flair, because Flair isn't satisfied with being that close to the ring and not being involved. Shoot, Sting told him to chop him. Sting told the man to chop him Wednesday night, and he did.
Well, I
So,
mean, it's and it's hard. So I was talking to, and I have to tell you this part too after the show. I was talking to a friend of mine who knew me like way back when, in my um, football like personal trainer era, right? And I was doing way less. This is before CrossFit. Then I got
okay.
into CrossFit, and CrossFit was so competitive that it was just kind of like, there's no way, because I'm a strong person. My endurance sucked balls, but I'm a strong person. So there's no way I was going to let a woman, and probably half the men in the gyms that I went to, like outlift me. And even when I went back for, I was like a competitive CrossFit athlete, and then I left for a while, and then I came back. I'm like, nah, I don't need to. There's no reason to deadlift 400 pounds. There's no why, right?
Strong like that. Okay.
Yeah. Though I was a ringer. There's a whole story with that. But now, the last time I went back for a brief period of time, I was like, oh, I can't. I'm just gonna lift 135. 135 is like my max. And the moment I got in there, even being out of shape, I was like, yeah, oh nah. I mean, I could deadlift at least 250 in my sleep. And that's when I knew that I can't step foot in a CrossFit gym, period. Because I know that I can't control myself, or I can't trust myself to be okay with just being. And you have a lot of people like that. They're like, I'm just here to work out. That's not my MO. Like, I'm not okay, especially if I know I'm really good at it. And I think that might be Flair's thing, and he can't get away from it because that's all his life. Like for me, I can shut that away and I can go to a different gym, and it's a totally different environment. It's not as competitive. But like for him, this is all his life. All his friends are wrestlers. Like everything around him is wrestling. So how can you not like want to, like, despite what your body says? Because I think we had talked about this like months ago or even last year. Despite what your body says, your mind kind of stops at, I don't necessarily, I'm sure there's psychology to it, but your mind kind of stops at a certain age, like your peak. Whatever your peak was, whether it's athletic, whether it was professional, whether it was personal, whether it was just like you just had two years of just like fun, and your mind stops there as your body's still aging. So I honestly think if you were to sit him down, he would think that he's, 26, 27-year-old Ric Flair in his mind, but his body's like, nah, son, like hang it up. But it's really, and to be in it for so long as he has, there's no retirement in his mind. Like basketball players and football players talk about this all the time, that you finish college, and if you're lucky enough to go professional, it's kind of like, after you retire, there's like a good 10-year period where you still think you are that professional athlete, and then you kind of get into life. Flair's never had to retire. So there's no, in his mind, there's no difference. It's like, I'm still a wrestler, period. Yeah. There's no like, I'm a former wrestler or I used to wrestle. It's like, nah, I'm still, he had that match. What was it like? Was it last year?
Last year.
There's no, if you ask him or if you introduce him as retired wrestler, I am willing to bet that he will correct you.
I'm sure he would. I'm scared. And cousin, yes, she's strong.
What up, cousin? Cousin Ron?
She is. I'm not getting in a fight with her. Absolutely, she'll throw me around.
I've been in 2 fights in my life, and I've been fortunate enough where I look like I can fight, and I can, but I don't need to. So thank you, Jesus.
Praise be.
That's all God right there.
So yeah, man, and talk about things we can't get away from. So somebody's asked CM Punk whether or not he would perform in WWE. I'm just gonna read you what he said. You can do with this what you'd like. He says, quote, "I don't want to burst anybody's bubble. I'm kind of just sitting at home enjoying this beautiful Chicago weather. I have an injury in the family. My dog Larry blew his dog ACL. I'm literally just spending my time with him. I know that sounds crazy, but he is my son, and I take care of him and treat him as such." Of course, the people are asking this because, the next big pay-per-view following Crown Jewel is Survivor Series, which just happens to be in Chicago. The talk is that they've actually expanded the seating in here twice. They've decided to change the stage, to lower the stage, to allow more room for seats. So people have started to somehow believe that CM Punk could show up at Survivor Series. Of course, Punk won't say yes. He won't say no. There's a part of me. Well, before I tell you what the part of me thinks, What do you think about CM Punk's potential of showing up in WWE?
I always think of like locker room etiquette, and a really good friend of mine, a former football player, he kind of really put me hip on that, because track, we don't have like locker room etiquette like that. We don't, we're in the locker room, but we're not in the locker room like that.
Yeah.
And the locker room etiquette kind of precedes you. Like if you are great in the locker room, or if you're not good in the locker room, like that will follow you from team to team. And not necessarily that wrestling has teams, obviously, but these big promotions are almost like teams. And I was actually talking to somebody yesterday who was interviewing a wrestler, and they're no longer with one promotion, but they're going to another promotion. And she was saying, oh, my former coworkers. And I was like, with wrestling, it doesn't seem like former coworkers. It's all a very, whether you like them or not or whatever, like everybody knows each other. If you don't know that person, then somebody knows that person. Like it's it's even with up and comers, people, old heads, all the stuff. So it's kind of one of those things where will you want to sacrifice the health of your locker room for a pop? And I don't think, given again that WWE is a publicly traded company, that they're willing to sacrifice that. Like the stunt that he pulled at was it all in? Like trying to pull that with Triple H?
No way. No way.
Just imagine he's sitting there and he says that to Triple H.
Yeah.
I can't see it. I don't even know what he would do. Like, would he first be in shock that like this man has the audacity to like do that? And then will the now, fighter athlete come out of him and he'll try to body slam this man? Like, what are all the feelings? And, and then also speaking of, as now a person who's in charge, do you want to deal with the potential of that?
Right.
It's just kind of like hiring somebody, like, they're disruptive. And it's just like, well, does their work output negate them being disruptive? And in this case, I don't think so. Because it'd be different as behind the scenes, but it was so public.
Right.
It's so public.
Right.
The level of disrespect was so public that was just like, yeah, nah.
And it had been going on for at least a year. The infamous scrum, where everybody talked about all the things that he said, people kept forgetting that he's literally disrespecting the owner of this company, and the owner is sitting 3 feet to his right. Like, I just couldn't imagine. The other reason why I don't think this will happen is WWE has been posting record numbers for the last year and a half without CM Punk. They don't need Punk to keep breaking records. They managed to sell the company, and for $9.3 billion without CM Punk. Punk is not going to bring anything more to WWE that they don't already have at this point. So, they can go and do this show in Chicago and have people show up, and people will only be mad if they have, coerce themselves to believe that CM Punk would show up. But WWE doesn't need him. And God forbid if they do bring him back, I think he's going to have such a tight leash on him that he's not going to, he's the type that, from what I gather, he would want to be, because that stuff that he couldn't pull in WWE. Because first of all, he's not going to intimidate the owner that way. So if you can't intimidate the owner that way, then so be it. Now there are people who keep saying that different announcers or different social spaces, connected to WWE keep kind of leaving these hints and breadcrumbs. But I really think that it's more people looking for things and things that are actually happening. I don't have any anticipation of seeing CM Punk show up at the Survivor Series.
Yeah, and I mean, and it could also be too, I don't know if you experienced this. I definitely did experience this with my parents. I don't know if you experienced this with your son. It could also be too that who you can get who you can get away with,
Right.
what person you can get away with stuff from, right? Like a child knows that before like 3.
Yeah.
Like I remember, like my ex has a son, and this child knew I had no power. Like he knew I had no power whatsoever. So he took advantage. This child took advantage of me, meaning that like he would ask to do something, or like his dad left him for a little bit and he's trying to get out of the bed. I'm not spanking nobody's child. I'm not getting into anything that, and that child sensed that, right? I think it's the same thing. He probably wouldn't do all those things. I think,
yeah.
I don't know how he was raised, but I think like human nature, he wouldn't do all those things. But yeah, it depends. Like say for instance, he gets the Jade Cargill treatment. Do you think he would act up, or do you think he would like, yo, this is what I deserve? Like, do you think there's a certain case in the world, certain scenario in the world that WWE could treat him a certain way and you would not get the AEW CM Punk?
I'm sure that before WWE would ever go public with it, that they would have a super strong conversation with lots of terms and agreements. And if those terms in any way are violated, he'd be out the door.
Right.
But I think for them, much to what you said earlier, they're weighing the pros and cons, and they're saying, it's like, gosh, I hate using this name, but it's like hiring Dennis Rodman. Like, he's coming with a whole disruptor thing on him. So the question is, okay, is what he's bringing with him, is it worth, okay, yeah, he's going to give me some rebounds and I'm going to get some great PR out of it, but I'm also probably going to get some horrible PR as well. Is it worth it? That's the question.
However, in that scenario, because if y'all watch Last Dance, I know you did, but just people who are watching us, if you watch Last Dance, it was Michael Jordan who co-signed and said, I got it. So if there is somebody in the locker room, or several people in this case in the locker room, that are willing to, I guess, stick their neck out and say, like, we got this, we got, like, don't worry, we'll handle it on this end, because there's only so much you can do as far as being upper management, then maybe I don't know. I caution, with the exodus of it all. I caution more like you were saying, you don't need it. The numbers are already there, and you don't need those cheap pops. Like people, if they are already expanding to create more tickets for more people to come without him even being on the billing, there's no storyline, any of that stuff, then, it would be different if they were like, hanging out there close to the red and they needed that pop, but they don't. There's so, I mean, with Jade alone,
right?
There's so much happening already as it is. But yeah, the visual of CM Punk and Triple H at that table just came to me, and that's laughable. I just want to see that in an alternate universe. I would love to see what would have happened. Just like he would just start just sitting up, like, I know this is
right,
and then he'll like maybe break the fourth wall. It's like, is he
right? And
then all of a sudden you see like Hulk, the Green Machine, Triple H, like burst out of his suit and body slam CM Punk through the table for the, like, I just, the visual.
It would be a thing. It would be a thing.
Special little nobody saying he kind of was the CM Punk in WWE, except that he didn't fight anyone because he would have gotten his tail kicked. Well, I mean, I don't think it's happening, but I've been wrong on several occasions, and I've been right. That's just the nature of life. Do you have anything else, or are we?
Well, one last thing very quickly. Shout out to our friends over at TNA who have put on sale their last Impact show. The last Impact show will be Final Resolution, happening on December the 9th in Toronto. tickets go on sale for that next Friday. And then they are putting tickets on sale for the very first New Era TNA shows, which will be Hard to Kill, happening on January the 13th, 2024. Crazy that we're saying that, in Vegas. And then there's a show that will be happening the next day, also in Vegas, called Snake Eyes Extravaganza. So you'll be able to get all those tickets at impactwrestling.com. But crazy to see only 2 more Impact branded shows left, which is crazy. Two original shows, which is just kind of nuts when you think about that. And once we get to 2024, it's TNA all day. Oh, that sounded, sorry.
Cut that out, Dylan. You know what to do.
What I said.
You know what to do, Dylan.
And yeah, okay.
So some exciting news. Well, not exciting. Well, it is exciting, but for you guys who are just joining us for WWT. So Mondays we have a WoW post show that you can check out. We also have a WoW interview that's going to be debuting tomorrow that you can check out. Really great interview, really insightful interview with one of the WoW OGs. We also have another interview on Monday that, ooh, baby. So you'll see the graphics and all the things pop up. So just keep it locked to our social media for all those things. We have quite a few interviews. Definitely check out our interview with Nikita, a Canadian sensation. That is, I think along with the invasion of, or not the invasion, the invasion, or the just so many women wrestlers coming about. We're also going to start seeing almost like a wave of Canadian wrestlers as well, because there's a lot of them that I didn't even. She was putting me on Game of the Summer. I was like, how did I not know this? Like some that we weren't even following. Wow. So there's a whole contingent. There's just, I think that in women's wrestling, we're going to see different waves of stuff. We had another interview today where I was talking to a wrestler about the fact that, we have the Janai Kai, we have the Bianca Belair, we have Jade, we have Naomi, we have Mercedes, all within the last 2-year period be champions. Yeah, which
Athena
is
as well.
Insane. So there's just so many things that are happening that it's going to be amazing. But you also want to keep it locked to Women's Wrestling Talk, because we also are going to be debuting the Pink List. And we're not going to tell you what the Pink List is.
You just have to stay tuned.
You just got to stay tuned to what it is. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be glorious.
Yes.
I'm very excited about this. But so many things. Wait, when are you heading to Jamaica? Is it this weekend, next weekend?
Next weekend.
Oh, next weekend. So,
yeah.
So
a week from today.
Are you broadcasting from Jamaica? What's going to happen?
Yeah, so it's going to be, I don't know where it's going to be streamed just yet, but it'll be recorded live in Jamaica.
Yeah, it's going to be recorded live. Ah, nice. We are going to be also interviewing the owner of, is it All Caribbean Wrestling?
All Caribbean, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be interviewing him tomorrow. So
sweet.
That will be dropping next week as well. So yeah, a lot of things. But in the TNA of it all, where can everybody find you, Professor?
Well done. You can find me, of course, at bonnerfide across all the spaces. On the socials, that's where you can find me. You can check out my commentary work with Southern Honor Wrestling and IWE on IWTV. You can check out my work with Battle Slam on Fight TV, The Nightmare Factory with YouTube. As we mentioned, November and December should be very interesting months in my end. November, I know for sure. We've got All Caribbean Wrestling. My debut with them is next weekend, so really excited about that. IWE will be coming up as well. And I don't know if I should drop this here or not. I'll probably drop it Monday, but I'll tell TK afterwards. So yeah, some really cool things are on the way. So
they are. And also another thing that's going to happen, I think I announced it on Wednesday, but another thing is going to happen. We're going to have, we haven't decided on a name for it, but it's like going to be WWT Live, like the post show.
Yes.
That you're going to have to be a member to see. Cause look, boy, do we talk about so much tea after this. Like it's not even the show itself. There's so many other things happening. So that's all going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, the excitement is real. Wait, you said where everybody could follow you, right?
Yes, at bonnerfide. Mm-hmm.
So definitely follow the professor. You can scan that QR code in the corner for all the merch. We're gonna have a really cool merch commercial coming up.
Oh wow. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yo, we have a merch commercial coming up, which is hilarious. I'm really excited about that. So hopefully that will be done by next week. But you can follow me on everything at tktrinidad. Follow Women's Wrestling Talk at everything WWTalkpod. Check out our website, www.talkpod.com. We're also, relaunching the website with some new stuff too, which is insane. But without that being said, so many things. Definitely Monday morning. First off, go and support WOW. Mm-hmm. It airs on Saturdays. You can go to your local listings to find out where it airs. My recommendation is, if you have cut the cord, meaning you don't have cable, go on Hulu, mm-hmm. look for WOW, then follow WOW, because if you don't press the record, you're not going to be able to see it until the next week.
Yeah.
So go follow WOW on Hulu. Then you can watch it anytime, mm-hmm. but watch it before we do our post show, which is Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. But thanks. Shout out to Dylan, shout out to Bobby, shout out to Special Nobodies, shout out to Eric, shout out to cousin Ron, shout out to Seti Said, shout out to Will. I don't think I've seen you before, Will. So shout out to Will and all the people. Thank you for joining. Shout out to Bosa, of course, mm-hmm. our information officer. Thank you guys so much for joining. Till Monday, y'all. Thank you for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao for now. Oh, I should actually get the outro late. Oh. Let's do that again. Ciao for now.
Women's Wrestling Talk.